Are you tired of constantly amending your garden soil and battling drought? Imagine a garden bed that practically waters itself and gets more fertile every year. In this video, I'll reveal the ancient secret of Hugelkultur, a revolutionary method that will transform your gardening experience and create a thriving ecosystem right in your backyard. Your traditional raised beds are beautiful, organized, and undeniably productive, but they're also working against you in ways you might not realize. Every season you're hauling in bags of compost and amendments because those elevated beds drain quickly and their nutrients leach away faster than in-ground gardens. You're watering more frequently because the soil dries out rapidly, and you're fighting an uphill battle against the fundamental reality that raised beds are essentially isolated systems cut off from the ground's natural moisture reserves and microbial highways. What if there was a way to build raised beds that actually become more fertile and self-sufficient over time, instead of depleting with each passing season? Hugelkultur, which translates from German as hill culture or mound culture, is an ancient Central European technique that's been quietly revolutionizing gardens for centuries. The concept is brilliantly simple yet profoundly effective. Instead of building raised beds on top of the ground or filling wooden frames with purchased soil, you're creating elevated growing areas by burying wood and organic matter, then covering it with soil and compost. As that buried wood slowly decomposes over years and, honestly, even decades, it transforms into a massive underground sponge that stores water, generates nutrients, harbors beneficial organisms, and creates the kind of rich, living soil that plants absolutely thrive in. The surprising secret that makes Hugelkultur so powerful is that decomposing wood is one of nature's most effective long-term carbon storage and nutrient generation systems. When you bury logs and branches, you're essentially installing a slow-release fertility system that will feed your plants for anywhere from 5 to 20 years, depending on the wood species and size. During this decomposition process, fungi move in first, breaking down the tough lignin and cellulose while creating vast underground networks. Bacteria follow, processing the simpler compounds and fixing nitrogen from the air. The wood itself acts like a massive reservoir, soaking up water during rainy periods and slowly releasing it during dry spells, dramatically reducing your irrigation needs while creating consistently moist conditions that roots absolutely love. The magic of decomposing wood goes far deeper than simple moisture retention, though that benefit alone would make Hugelkultur worthwhile. As wood breaks down, it undergoes a fascinating transformation that creates an environment unlike anything in conventional raised beds. Fresh wood initially ties up nitrogen as decomposer organisms multiply rapidly, but after the first year or two, this process reverses, and the decomposing wood becomes a net nitrogen producer through the activity of nitrogen-fixing bacteria that colonize the rotting wood. Simultaneously, fungi are breaking down complex organic compounds into humic acids and other substances that dramatically improve soil structure, nutrient availability, and the ability to hold both water and air in optimal proportions. Think of your Hugelkultur bed as a living organism that matures and improves with age. In the first year, you might notice that plants require a bit more nitrogen supplementation as the wood begins its decomposition journey, but by year 2, the system hits its stride. The buried wood has started to soften and become colonized by beneficial organisms, creating an underground universe of biological activity. By year 3 and beyond, you're really starting to experience the true magic soil that stays consistently moist even during drought, fertility that pretty much builds itself through natural decomposition cycles, and a root environment so rich in beneficial organisms that, honestly, disease and pest problems become remarkably rare. This self-feeding ecosystem develops because you've created conditions that mirror what happens on a forest floor, where fallen logs nurture new growth for decades. The decomposing wood provides a stable structure that prevents the soil compaction that plagues conventional raised beds. It creates air pockets and channels that allow roots to penetrate deeply while ensuring excellent drainage and aeration. The continuous breakdown of organic matter generates gentle heat, extending your growing season by warming the soil earlier in spring and keeping it active longer in fall. This warming effect is subtle but significant, often giving you an extra 2 to 3 weeks on both ends of the growing season compared to conventional beds. The long-term payoff is where Hugelkultur truly shines and separates itself from every other raised bed method. While conventional raised beds decline in fertility and structure over time, requiring constant inputs to maintain productivity, Hugelkultur beds improve year after year for the first decade or more. The buried wood continues breaking down, creating ever richer soil and better moisture retention. You'll find that by year 5, you're barely watering even during summer heat waves, and your plants show the kind of vigorous growth and stress resilience that typically requires extensive fertilization programs in conventional gardens. Building your first Hugelkultur bed is an immensely satisfying project that transforms materials many gardeners consider waste into the foundation of extraordinary fertility. Start by selecting your location, keeping in mind that these beds work beautifully as permanent installations, since they'll be producing for many years. You can build on top of existing lawn or poor soil because the system is self-contained, though removing sod first will prevent grass from competing with your crops in the first season. The foundation of your Hugelkultur bed is the wood layer, and honestly, choosing the right materials makes all the difference. Hardwoods like oak, maple, ash, and fruit woods are ideal because they decompose slowly and provide long-lasting benefits, though they'll take longer to fully activate. Softer woods like pine, poplar, and willow break down more quickly, providing faster initial benefits but, a shorter overall lifespan. I generally recommend mixing wood types, placing larger hardwood logs at the bottom for long-term structure and topping them with softer woods and branches that will begin feeding your plants more quickly. Aim for logs and branches ranging from 2 inches to 12 inches in diameter, creating a base layer that's at least 18 to 24 inches tall before you add any soil. Here's a crucial point that many beginners miss. Avoid using black walnut, black locust when fresh, or any chemically treated lumber, as these contain compounds that can inhibit plant growth. Also skip wood from diseased trees unless you're certain the disease won't affect your garden plants. Cedar and other rot-resistant woods will work, but take much longer to decompose, so they're better suited for Hugelkultur beds you're planning as truly long-term installations. If your wood is very dry, take time to thoroughly soak it before building, as pre-moistened wood jumpstarts the decomposition process and helps prevent your new bed from acting like a wick that dries out the surrounding soil. Layering is where you transform a pile of logs into a productive growing system. After your base wood layer, add a substantial layer of nitrogen-rich green materials like fresh grass clippings, spent crops, livestock manure, or coffee grounds. This green layer, roughly 4 to 6 inches thick, feeds the initial decomposer organisms and helps balance the carbon-heavy wood below. Next comes a layer of leaves, straw, or other fine organic matter, another 4 to 6 inches, which helps retain moisture and provides additional food for soil organisms. Finally, top everything with at least 6 to 8 inches of good soil mixed with compost, creating an immediate growing surface while the wood below begins its slow transformation. The finished bed should have a rounded, mounded shape that will settle and flatten over the first year as the wood begins compacting and decomposing. Don't worry about this settling. It's completely normal and actually indicates that the system is activating properly. Many gardeners build their Hugelkultur beds quite tall, sometimes 3 to 4 feet at the peak, knowing they'll lose about a third of that height in the first year. This dramatic mounding also maximizes surface area, giving you significantly more planting space than a flat bed of the same footprint. The water retention capabilities of a mature Hugelkultur bed are nothing short of extraordinary and represent one of the most compelling reasons to adopt this technique. Decomposing wood can hold water at up to 3 times its weight when fully saturated, creating an enormous underground reservoir that your plants can tap into during dry periods. In practical terms, this means a well-established Hugelkultur bed might require watering only once every 2 to 3 weeks during summer, compared to every 2 to 3 days for conventional raised beds. The wood doesn't just store water, it regulates moisture levels, preventing both the waterlogging that can occur after heavy rains and the rapid drying that plagues traditional raised beds. The nutrient powerhouse aspect of hugelkultur becomes increasingly apparent with each passing season. As the wood breaks down, it releases not just the obvious nutrients like nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, but also the full spectrum of trace minerals that were part of the living tree. The biodiversity benefits extend far beyond the microscopic level, though the microbial life in hugelkultur beds is indeed extraordinary. The varied environments within the bed, from the oxygen-rich surface to the more anaerobic deeper zones around the wood core, support an incredible range of organisms. The beauty of hugelkultur maintenance is that there's remarkably little to do, especially after the first season. During year 1, you may need to add supplemental nitrogen through compost tea, fish emulsion, or other organic fertilizers to counteract the initial nitrogen tie-up as decomposers colonize the wood. Keep the bed consistently moist during this establishment phase, as the wood needs to stay wet to decompose properly. Top dress with an inch or two of compost each spring to maintain soil depth as settling occurs, and to continue feeding the surface ecosystem. As your bed matures, maintenance becomes even simpler. Annual compost additions can decrease or even stop after a few years as the system becomes fully self-sustaining. You'll primarily focus on harvesting abundant crops and enjoying the fact that your watering and fertilizing requirements have dropped dramatically. When you do harvest, leave roots in place rather than pulling them out completely. These dead roots create channels for air and water while feeding soil organisms as they decompose, further improving your bed's structure and fertility. For those ready to expand, hugelkultur adapts beautifully to gardens of any size. Small urban gardens can host miniature hugelkultur beds built with branches and smaller wood pieces, creating low mounds just 12 to 18 inches tall that still provide significant benefits. Large properties might incorporate massive hugelkultur installations using whole tree trunks, creating dramatic swales or terraces that manage water across the landscape while producing abundant food. The technique works equally well in cold climates where the insulation and heat generation extend the growing season, and in hot, dry regions where the water retention proves invaluable. Consider creating a succession of hugelkultur beds, building new ones every year or two so you always have beds at different stages of maturity. This staggered approach means you'll experience peak production continuously as different beds hit their prime years. You might designate your newest beds for crops that tolerate or benefit from slightly lower nitrogen, like root vegetables, while reserving your mature, super fertile beds for heavy feeders like tomatoes, squash, and corn. The broader impact of adopting hugelkultur extends well beyond your personal garden success. You're sequestering carbon that would otherwise decompose quickly as brush or end up in landfills, effectively removing it from the atmosphere and locking it into stable soil humus for decades. You're creating habitat for countless beneficial organisms, increasing local biodiversity in a world where natural ecosystems face mounting pressure. You're dramatically reducing your water consumption and eliminating the need for synthetic fertilizers, making your gardening practice genuinely sustainable rather than just calling it that. If you're ready to build garden beds that improve themselves year after year while reducing your workload and increasing your harvests, subscribe to the Living Soil Lab for more deep dives into techniques that work with nature instead of against it. Share this guide with fellow gardeners who are ready to transform their approach from constant intervention to thoughtful partnership with natural processes. Together, we're rediscovering and adapting time-tested methods that create abundance while building soil, supporting life, and proving that the most productive gardens are those that align with ecological principles. Let's keep building, growing, and learning together.